Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and today we're breaking down Deadpool 2.
It lives up to the hype, plus.
Fuck it, they probably won't even make a 3.
Yeah, why would they? Stop it too. You killed it.
Teased in the post-credits scene for Part 1, this sees Cable appearing in the film, played by none other than Josh Brolin. Brolin was also in the role of Thanos, which even gets a little joke later in the movie.
Zip it, Thanos. We have a deal, and you fucker.
The sequel ideas were in the works even before the first film released, which is why we got the tease at the end. Simon Kinberg worked on a number of X-Men films and said that he wanted to bring in Cable for a long time. They were floating around him showing up in Days of Future Past, but after all that fell through, it gave room for Deadpool. The sequel had yet to be greenlit, but the creatives still started brainstorming things early. Now that the first film was such a big hit, Reynolds had extra clout, and because they hadn't drawn up contracts, he had a big opportunity. In the end, he negotiated more creative control and had complete casting approval. This caused Tim Miller to step back, as he felt he and Reynolds clashed over where to take the movie. He wanted to take things more in line with the first one and have it be slightly more grounded than what Reynolds was planning. He also wanted Gina Carano to return, and for Kyle Chandler to be in the role of Cable. Vanessa would also have further development and become copycat like how she is in the comics. Marina Baccarin also said she felt like the character was a victim of fridging, with this term originating from Green Lantern 52. In case you don't know, Kyle Rayner found his girlfriend's body in a fridge, with that then becoming his driving force in the story. Fridging basically means when a female character is introduced just to be killed off so that they can help the main character have motive in the story. Writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick denied this though and said they had no idea what fridging was, and originally she was just going to break up with him. This was obviously changed though, and lastly in Miller's version, Juggernaut would fight the Thing, with Fox even approving use of the character. On the other side of this, Reynolds wanted the humour turned up to 11, and to take things in a different direction with Cable. At the end of Part 1, he also mentioned these names.
The sequel? We're gonna have Cable. Just need a big guy with a flat top. Could be Mel Gibson, Dolph Lundgren, Keira Knightley.
Lundgren was really interested as well, and he posted fan art of himself on Instagram posing as the character. I'm not sure if that was just a joke or what, but other people involved included Michael Shannon. David Harbour screen tested for it too, with Pierce Brosnan also getting close as well. Brad Pitt was almost really close to it too, but scheduling issues ended up in the way. He said to MTV News he'd taken the superhero genre as far as he could take it, and thanked Reynolds for giving him a role that he was able to bring justice to. In the end, it of course went to Brolin, and it's going to be interesting to see if he comes back down the line. He has signed on for a 4-picture deal, with there now being 3 more appearances he's obligated to make. As for the other aspects, it apparently caused conflict at the studio, and Fox chose Reynolds over Miller's wishes. This then brought in Domino, with a role being highly sought after. Aubrey Plaza, she almost got out, with Zazie Beetz winning out in the end. John Wick's David Leitch was brought on to direct, with that distinctive action style being present in the movie. That gets a little nod in the opening credits, when we can see his name's listed as one of the guys who killed John Wick's dog. Never forget! Never forgive! And the budget was also doubled to $110 million, but there were a number of things that they couldn't get to work. Mr. X was initially going to be the villain, but they felt that they couldn't balance him with the others present. There was also Black Tom Cassidy and Sluggo as well, but their roles were cut down to be just minor ones in the movie. And the movie was released with 3 different versions. Firstly, there was the theatrical, which also dropped on Blu-ray, and along with that came the super duper extended cut. That's the version I'm going to be watching for this breakdown, as that has the most details in it. There was also a Christmas PG-13 version released as well, but yeah, we're going hard and uncut for this one. Ow! Now we begin as always with the Marvel logo, which then transitions into a lighter sparking up. We then see Deadpool smoking a cigarette, which he'll use in just a minute to blow himself up. We can also catch him winding up a musical toy of Wolverine's, speared on a branch like his death scene in Logan. This ends up coming full circle in the final scene, as they use the same music in both Deadpool and Logan's death.
There's one out there for you. Just keep looking, okay?
Deadpool also says,
Fuck Wolverine. First, he rides my coattails with the R rating. Then, the hairy motherfucker ups the ante by dying.
and I love this tongue-in-cheek joke, and to be fair, you have to admit that Deadpool opened up the door for R-rated comic book movies. According to insiders at Fox, it was only once they saw how well Deadpool did that they decided to go that direction with Wolverine. Now we look about the apartment and can see some mementos from the first film. There's Wade wearing a cap like how he did at the laundromat, and also a shot of Vanessa and Wade's first date. We can also see them wearing Christmas hats, with that first film originally being set during Christmas. There's also a Canadian flag, with Reynolds of course being from the country.
Canada!
Canada!
In the background, we can hear the song All Out of Love by Air Supply, which Reynolds also sang in Van Wilder. Before blowing up, we can see his blue-coloured Crocs, which were also something that he wore in the first film. Both him and Vanessa are also shot in the heart, which symbolically brings their two deaths together. Cut to 6 weeks prior, with Deadpool going on a killing spree, and we get a shot of a skyscraper with a Japanese sign on it. These characters roughly translate to Deadpool, with the first of them being death. That also taps into the themes of this movie, with Wade longing to die so he can go be with Vanessa. Listening to X Gon give it here, this song of course appeared in the first movie before the final battle. There it was used to highlight they were X-Men possessing an X gene coming from Xavier's mansion. Here it's used to amp himself up, much in the same way Shoop was used in the first film. We can catch our little portable player here too, with it having Wade written on it like how it did last time. Calling his target, he then pulls up a card which, according to Dub18 on Reddit, has the word Red Lotus on it. Red Lotus is a villain from the comics, with him being a mutant who ran the Sydney Triads. Cutting up the forces to Dolly Parton's 9 to 5, it really sets a tone for this montage, and after slicing them up, we see him popping out a coffin, which reminded me a lot of the level in the PS2 Punisher game.
It's the Punisher!
Deadpool also references Ace Ventura.
Woo! Do not go in there! Do not go in there! Woo!
And the extended cut has a line about Captain America.
Well, let's see Captain America do that.
Cut to the strip club, and we then see him wearing a blonde wig and heels. This was put in to be a nod to Lady Deadpool, with it also being rumoured she'll appear in the third film. Cutting to a bathhouse in Osaka, this was extended for the longer cut, with us getting the camera rotating around him several times. Leach was gutted they had to cut it for the theatrical one, as it took a lot of work, and it really shows a step up from the first film. They're way more creative with the staging here, including him chasing a dealer through a warehouse, which is all done in one take. We then see him with his Adventure Time watch, which is also something that he had in the first film. Cut to him running to the taxi in a shot that resembles the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here we see Dopinder listening to a Tony Robbins self-help tape, with this being something that drives him throughout the movie. Now in case you missed our first video, Dopinder was someone Reynolds named after a kid he went to school with, who unfortunately died after being struck by lightning. Deadpool also calls Dopinder Goose, with him being the co-pilot from Top Gun. Tom Cruise films get referenced throughout the movie, with him constantly bringing up Interview with a Vampire.
And then remember the movie Interview with a Vampire?
Don't want to.
When Tom Cruise fed 10-year-old Kirsten Dunst's blood for the first time.
One of Ryan's early films, Dick, had him making out with her, and Brad Pitt of course also starred in that movie too. Here he also brings up how he's now mentioned in the same sentence as Jesus.
No, I'm talked about in the same sentence as Jesus. Passion of the Christ, then me.
With this referring to the box office returns, in which Passion was the highest R-rated movie domestically, whereas Deadpool beat it abroad. Going back home, we see as Deadpool gets out of the taxi and can catch on the advert that this is for Alpha Flight. There's the Canadian Maple Leaf flag there as well, with Alpha Flight being a Canadian comic team. Deadpool then says,
You're right. I was fighting a caped badass. But then we discovered his mom is named Martha, too.
Why did you say that name?
You get that one, you get it. However, the plot of this movie also somewhat plays off those versus type movies, because we have two heroes fighting each other that then have to team up. He also gives Vanessa an arcade token, which is where the pair had their first date. Again, it comes full circle, as it's kind of what brings them together due to how the token comes around again at the end. Vanessa says her baby factory is open, and the writers confirm there was a script where they had a son. However, they realise that due to the humour, it just wouldn't work, and they ended up excising it from the plot. They then sit down and watch Yentl, with Wade constantly pointing out how it sounds just like Frozen.
Papa, can you see me?
Does this song sound familiar to you?
Do you want to build a snowman?
But the creative team ended up kicking themselves on the commentary as they realised that Barbra Streisand is married to Josh Brolin's dad, James. You know James Brolin, mate, you've seen Westworld, it looks like Christian Bale throughout the entire thing, but either way, they said they'd completely forgotten to include it, even though it would have been a perfect meta joke. Deadpool later wears Chunks of Wine shirt from the Goonies, which he has when he's talking to Cable. Apparently that was something they also forgot to mention, and Brolin himself didn't even put two and two together. However, Deadpool does call him,
Give me your best shot, One-Eyed Willie.
which is a reference to the pirate from the Goonies. So at least I didn't miss that, and Wade then compares his daddy issues to Luke in Star Wars, which Vanessa then corrects to being Empire.
Baby, that's Empire.
This is a callback to this line from the first film.
Star Wars jokes.
Empire.
Now, the whole discussion here is about how kids make you a better person, which in many ways Russell ends up doing. You see Deadpool putting some food in the microwave, with the shot set up being the same as right before he blew himself up. This brings the moment full circle, and his death or attempt at it mirrors Vanessa's. grabbing her killer and standing in front of a moving vehicle. We then cut to a James Bond-esque opening scene. I felt like there was a bit of a reference to Bond in the first film when Wade introduced himself as this.
Dopinder.
Pool. Dead.
This song's of course sang by Celine Dion, and it was also used to help with the pacing. Leach felt if they went from Vanessa's death straight into the story, that it would feel like it didn't carry impact. However, doing this gives it room to breathe, and thus we can feel the weight of her passing. During this, we can catch his swords coming towards the camera, and on the bottom can see the words B. Deadpool's swords are named both B and Arthur because the character's a big fan of Golden Girls. He also wore her t-shirt with a face on it in the first film, and as I've been saying, it's all connected. Now if you think it's all connected, then make sure you check out our Kevin Feige shirts right below the video. All goes towards helping videos like this get made, and you'll get at least one new mate out of it. Me. So good luck with that, and thank you. Now just like the first movie, all the credits listed here are little tongue-in-cheek jokes about what's going on. Most of them are just shocked reactions and anger over Vanessa being killed, with one even saying Ryan Reynolds didn't want to share the spotlight. Realising David Leitch directed this movie, they'd also made that little one about John Wick's dog hit a bit more. Never forget! The writers are also known as the heroes of the first one, but here they get a little diss on themselves. The cinematography is carried out by Blind Al, and we also see on the front of Deadpool's gun that it says smile and then wait for the flash. He also does a nod to Flashdance with a chair push, and we also see a bullet in the arcade tokens showing how the movie's gonna end. From here we cut to the Sister Margaret School for Wayward Girls bar, which was a play off Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Wade says,
George Michael was right, I'm never gonna dance again.
And the first film of course ended with him and Vanessa kissing in a careless whisper. Helped by Buck, this character returns from the first film, with him then telling Wade the 5 stages of grief.
Jesus Christ, Buck. No more speaking lines for you.
Just kills me that bit, because the guy's delivery's so bad.
According to the
Kubler-Ross?
Yeah. According to the Kubler-Ross model.
Deadpool then digs up the floorboards, and we can see 2 things that he talked about in the first film.
And also, there's about 116 kilos of cocaine buried somewhere in the apartment, right next to the cure for blindness.
Love how you got that cure for blindness there, and Blind Al sits down and pulls out her gun. This is the same one Wade took from her in the first film, and it's also the one that he used to kill Francis with. She tells him to keep living.
You need to just keep living.
Now shout out to Ryan Harry, pointing out this is a reference to Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused.
You just gotta keep living, man.
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Airy!
Trying to destroy himself in as many ways as possible, we see him initially diving into a polar bear pit. He also jumps off a building after drinking Clog Cleaner, and this has Agent K written at the bottom. This is a nod to Josh Brolin's character in Men in Black 3, and he says that he needs to die harder. That's trademark Fox, with Fox of course owning the rights to that franchise. Don't reboot it, please don't reboot it. Now this montage actually builds off the back of the first film, as we were going to get something similar in that. In a deleted scene when Wade goes to tell Vanessa he's alive, he was then going to step out and get hit by a bus. This would then spiral out into a Groundhog Day inspired montage in which he'd keep offing himself and then waking up in the morgue. Grabbed by Colossus, Wade's then taken to the X-Mansion, which has of course appeared throughout the franchise and also in Arrow. From here we then jump to Essex's house, with us getting an extended scene of this in the super duper cut. Kind of feel like this is a metaphor for stuff like conversion therapy, with them wanting to turn mutants back to being humans. At the 36-minute mark, the guy removes his tie, and it's clear they're leaning into some of the uniforms used in religion. Essex's house is also a nod to Nathaniel Essex, who in the comics is Mr. Sinister. Essex Corp have appeared throughout the franchise, as they're the ones who grab Wolverine's blood in X-Men Apocalypse. This in itself was used to create Deadpool, with droplets of blood being spotted in the syringe. Julian Dennison was also the only person considered for the role of Russell, with Ryan crafting the part for him after seeing him in Hunt for the Wilder People. In that, his character Ricky wears a hoodie, with a similar one being brought into this film. Russell also constantly talks about the gangster life, which is something that Ricky does too.
We're like thugs, we're like gangsters. I'm like Tupac and you're like Ice Cube.
Waking up on a couch, you can then see 2 cats on Deadpool's t-shirt. These are Olivia and Meredith, which are actually Taylor Swift's cats. Swift's been mates with Reynolds and his wife Blake Lively, with her including a sample of one of their daughters on the song Gorgeous. Swift wore one of Reynolds' Deadpool costumes on Halloween ones, and it's also rumoured she's going to play Dazzler in Deadpool 3. I'm making this before seeing the trailer or the movie, so if you're from the future and know if she's in, then leave it in the comments below. Lots of time travelling stuff right now. Anyway, Negasonic Teenage Warhead is back from the first film, and this time she's with her girlfriend Yukio, Deadpool calls her.
Especially Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony.
With this potentially revealing that he's secretly a brony. In the comics, she's typically a lot older, but they wanted to lower her age for her relationship with Negasonic. We can see that the two also drink out of cups that both say I'm with her and have an arrow underneath it. Deadpool calls Negasonic 11 throughout the film, and this is of course a reference to Stranger Things. They actually wanted her to have a shaved head again, with it burning off whenever she activated her powers. However, Brianna Hildebrand was working on another project, and thus they just kept it at this mohawk. We see Deadpool spinning around in Professor X's chair, and we were going to get a deleted scene where he tried on Cerebro.
It's a big house. It's funny that I only ever see two of you. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Man.
Which plays off here.
Where the fuck is everyone? It's always just you and Negasonic Teenage longest name ever.
Although you can see a lot of X-Men members in one of the classrooms. This includes Evan Peters, Ralph Boner, stupid, who would ever do that? Evan Peters is Quicksilver and James McAvoy is Professor X. This clears up the confusion from the first film in which Deadpool wondered what timeline he was in.
Let us go talk to the professor.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
Quicksilver is also wearing an Nirvana t-shirt, which was meant to tease that the next X-Men film would take place in the 90s. This was actually shot alongside Dark Phoenix, which is why the cats were able to come together for what's a couple seconds long shot. You also have Beast, Nightcrawler, Storm, and Cyclops. These were them in their 80s and 90s stuff, and this is set in the 2010s, but yeah, lots of timey-wimey wibbly-wobbly stuff, and let's be honest, Fox don't care too much about continuity. And they actually went this direction due to Apocalypse, and for the fact that Patrick Stewart had just been in Logan. That was said to be his final appearance, but as we know, he'd returned for the MCU. He also brings up Angel.
But how about that Potts with the giant pigeon wings?
At this point we meet Cable, with them basking him in a purple light. Little nod to Thanos by the creative team, but what we see is a world akin to the one from Days of Future Past. We learn that his family were killed, and he constantly carries around a burnt teddy bear. This too showed up in the opening credits scene, and it's used as a way to show whether the future's fixed or not. This is something that Back to the Future did a lot, with there being lots of items that change throughout the trilogy. We've covered all those films on the channel, and definitely check them out if you want to see us dive into them. Now, the time travel stuff they do here is sort of akin to Terminator, with Cable travelling through time to try and kill Russell. Deadpool at one point calls him John Connor, and the sound his gun makes when recharging was taken from Terminator 2. Cable also has a scene staring at himself in the mirror, which riffs off the back of when Arnie cut his eye out. Later on, Cable also spins his gun to cock it, and it's similar how Terminator did it when riding on the motorbike. The Days of Future Past adopted the whole going back in time to change things, but instead of trying to kill someone, they were trying to stop that from happening. That's something they said was more in line with Professor X, but Cable, he's just a bloody cold-blooded killer. Now, Russell is said to be the mutant Antichrist, which in itself comes from the comics. That played out in the Kid Apocalypse arc, which itself was a part of Uncanny X-Force. In the comics, Cable's infected with a techno-organic virus, and this makes him able to tap into machines. He also has cybernetic parts, and is very much a child of the 90s. Now, speaking of being a child, he's also sort of the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey. I think. I'm not fully up on all the lore right now, but last scene, which was like years ago, he's sort of a clone son, because Cyclops was his dad, and Madeline Pryor, aka Jean Grey's clone, that was his mother. I think. It's all over the place, but we get a nod to the Pryor later in the prison truck scene, as we can see a van with Pryor on the side of it. According to IMDb Trivia, Leach wanted to include more of his backstory, but they ended up scrapping it because it was just too convoluted. We were going to get a photo with Cyclops and Cable's daughter Hope, but this raised too many questions, and thus it was cut. Hope Summers is actually a big character in the comics, with her being labelled as the Mutant Messiah. Hoping we get to meet her one day in the movies, and that we get a live-action Avengers vs. X-Men.
What's with the creepy, dirty hobo bear?
It's my daughter's teddy bear. Her name's Hope.
Anyway, one of my favourite things about what they do with Cable isn't in the film, and it comes from the Meet Cable trailer.
Maybe the kind that leaves you more machine than man.
Wait, no, stop! What in the actual ass? Dale, why are the visual effects not done? It's a metal arm. It's not like we're trying to remove a mustache.
Just always kills me that, and I wish they'd left it in the movie somehow, with it being a nod to the nightmare that was Justice League. His time travel device is made from a Carl F. Bucaro watch, with these also appearing in Leach's other films. Those were John Wick 2 and Atomic Blonde, but I couldn't find out why he keeps on using them. We see him flickering through moments in time, and this includes a shot of the Blackbird. This is it later coming over the trees, with this showcasing its arrival at the Essex house. Travelling back, he goes to these two guys, with them being pretty big cameos. These are Alan Tudyk and Matt Damon. Damon's got a fake beard and beer belly and facial prosthetics, and the first time I seen him, I didn't fully recognise him. If you didn't, then you're not the only one, as IMDb Trivia states that the camera crew didn't either. Now imagine being told you'd worked with Matt Damon and then had no idea until he'd left the set. chumps. Even in the credits, the character's name says Dickie Greenleaf, which is a little nod to the identity he steals in the talented Mr. Ripley. Now, the whole idea for this bit came from an argument Rhett Reese has been making for years, and apparently Ryan Reynolds just had to put it in the movie. They thought the best thing to do was get a highly esteemed actor to deliver the pitch, and Reynolds then reached out to Damon. Damon got so far into the role that he apparently is now a wet wipes guy. He's a method actor, and to be fair, I am too. And don't at me in the comments until you've tried it. We're trying to sell you that as well. Now, this is obviously why Ryan Ari's got more subscribers than me, but at this point, Cable steals a 6-pack of beer. Huge shoutouts to Monster Can on Reddit for pointing out that one of the first things Cable does in the comics is form the group's 6-pack. He then also robs a gun store, which is something the Terminator did in his first movie. In the extended cut, we then get a scene where he takes a canister out the fridge and then puts this down next to some name badges. One of them says Wheels, which is a nod to what Logan called Professor X the first time they met. Colossus also says,
Something wrong with the soap.
It's fine. I just filled it. Give it a few more pumps there.
which hilariously plays off later in the movie.
People think you wake up a hero, ejaculate into a soap dispenser a hero.
Cutting to Deadpool reading a book, this is The Canadian Mounted, which John Candy's character also read in Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Watching a news report, we can then see the ticker has a couple of cool details. The first talks about how there's abnormally high winds expected in the downtown area, which later leads to the death of X-Force. The one that follows it is about how Christopher Plummer refused to do reshoots, which is a little joke about all the money in the world. On that, he replaced Kevin Spacey, with the actor's scenes all being reshot. Now, outside the Essex house, we then meet Russell, who's based on the comic character Fire Fist. We then hear the reporter's name is Irene Merriweather, who is a reporter that comes from the comics. Later on, she appears during the X-Force scene, and she's in the helicopter that kills Shatterstar. We then see as Deadpool becomes a trainee for the X-Men, calling back to this line from the first film.
So what? You're like, his sidekick?
No, trainee.
Stanley apparently hated sidekicks, and this is why you don't really see many at Marvel. He then says,
We're the X-Men, dated metaphor for racism in the 60s.
With that basically being what Stanley created them for, with them being a metaphor for prejudice. Deadpool asks if the Fire Fist burns from the elbow, and later on we see he guessed right. Russell's powers can be seen originating from his elbows and then moving up his wrists directly into the fists.
But I'm not a rapper.
We then get this line.
Come quietly, or there will be trouble.
You stole that from RoboCop.
But Deadpool's stealing a line from the film during the first movie.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Deadpool then gets thrown into a nearby building and he autographs a box of Hero Flakes with Wolverine on it. Deadpool signs this as Ryan Reynolds, which, yeah, I don't know why, but guessing it's because he's so used to signing things that he automatically does it. Or it's a joke and I'm just bloody stupid. We get the joke there anyway. But the kid here is played by the same kid who plays David Haller in the X-Men show Legion. With that being connected to this, people have also done a theory time, that they might be the same character. Now, if you love the classics, then definitely check out our partners Arrow, who have a ton of amazing 4K Blu-rays on their site. They've just released Carrie, which I watched today, brilliant, have RoboCop on there too, and are also dropping Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is a film I'm going to cover. Use the code HEAVYSPOILERS at checkout for 10% off. That's HEAVYSPOILERS at checkout for 10% off. Shabow! The Deadpool then does the superhero landing, which he has difficulty getting up from. This is obviously a nod to this bit from the first film, with it being really impractical and bad on your knees.
Oh, fuck. Oh, that is so not practical.
Woo! Superhero landing. Yeah, that's really hard on your knees. Totally impractical. They all do it.
Quoting that film even further, Deadpool then does the 4 or 5 moment speech that Colossus did in the first one.
4 or 5 moments.
I'm sorry?
4 or 5 moments, that's all it takes.
Fuck it.
4 or 5 moments. I'm sorry? 4 or 5 moments. That's all it takes.
Shooting the orderly that he referred to as Jared Kushner, this makes Colossus realize that he's not X-Men material. Now, Wade and Russell are sent to the Icebox, which is a Canadian super prison that comes from the comics. Originally in the first film, they wanted to use the raft, and a sign for it even showed up in a deleted scene. However, they scrapped that after being worried about Marvel, who were also featuring it during Civil War. As they enter, you can also see a guy with green hair doing a slow clap, which is sort of a combo of Heath Ledger's Joker and the Jared Leto version. As we see the inmates, there's one with long white hair, and we know from the behind-the-scenes stuff that this is Omega Red. That can be seen on a scene on YouTube, and apparently he was gonna have more to do here. However, they ended up cutting him out, along with another mutant in Abyss. We also get a quick shot of Black Tom Cassidy, which somewhat foreshadows Juggernaut's arrival. In the comics, the pair often team up, whereas for this movie, he of course sides with Russell. We also get a nod to the sorting hat from Harry Potter, with Deadpool hoping he gets to be in a gang. Cut to Cable, and there's a ticker outside his room, which we get constant cuts to. Managed to read one of them, and it says, cuddling a kitten every day can be good for you, which, hey, I'm glad we're finally getting the message out there. And with the collar on Deadpool, the cancer comes back, and it's completely stripped him of his powers. However, he doesn't want to escape because this will finally let him be with Vanessa. Approached by Black Tom Cassidy, Russell ends up pulling out a pen, which we saw in the opening credits scene. Deadpool gets the crap kicked out of him, and as he says, he's basically Hawkeye, and we then get further references to Marvel when Deadpool says this.
Grumpy old fucker with a Winter Soldier arm.
This takes the fight to the shower scene, and as Deadpool walks around, we can catch a sign up on the back. This says, conduct cavity searches without warning, which, yikes.
Who are you? I'm Batman.
Which is a reference to this.
What are you? I'm Batman.
And this.
I'm Batman.
Where it also says this and makes fun of his pouches.
Dubstep's on pussies.
You're so dark!
You sure you're not from the DC universe?
Now that dubstep line is a constant back and forth they have, whether it's still a thing in the future. This sets up Skrillex's Bangarang, which plays over the fight scene here and later on the convoy. Deadpool also says he has a lot of pouches, which is something Rob Liefeld got criticised for because all his characters had tons and tons of pouches. However, over the years he's come to embrace it and even signs pouches at conventions as he sees it as a good thing.
People who are bugged by it, they nitpick it. And, you know, a couple weeks ago I put up all the pictures of things in pop culture or things in reality that have pouches. SWAT units. Guys in the military field have pouches. Isn't that funny? They have pouches. I guess when my military guys have pouches, it's not such a big leap, but it's easy. And you know what I love? I love when people, in the last 5 years, it's happened a lot, they bring me pouches to sign. Brand spanking new pouches, and I sign them or I draw on them. That's cool. You know what? I made a niche for myself. You identify that with me. Something. You know how many artists would love to be identified, period?
After Deadpool pulls the pin on Cable's explosive, they're blown outside, and we get this returning line from the first film.
Rock, meat, bottom. Rock, meat, bottom.
Both ended with Wade falling into something, with the water here taking him to Vanessa. Realizing that it's Russell who's going to make him a better person, he then crawls outside and returns to the bar. They then start to brainstorm recruiting a team that can also carry the franchise for 10 or 15 years.
I'm talking about some Ocean's 14 shit, Rogue 2, John Wick 3, but with the original director.
My body.
Little slight dig there, as though Chad Stahelski directed John Wick 1, 2, 3 and 4, Leach was actually co-director on the first film. However, it's Stahelski who tends to get the sole credit, and though I think they're mates, you know, he's just thrown a little joke out about it because he often gets overlooked. Now back at the prison, Russell goes through the Juggernaut, with him realising he has to befriend the biggest guy there instead of beating him up. At this point, Wade and Weasel go to recruit X-Force, with their first profile being Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We then meet Bedlam from the X-Force comics, and he's played by Terry Crews. Deadpool says he's basically Dave Matthews because he can cause pain and anxiety by distorting electrical fields. Later on, when Bedlam dies, he says, "No tripping billies," with that being a song by the Dave Matthews Band. We then meet Zeitgeist, who's played by Bill Skarsgård, Rob Delaney plays Peter, Lewis Tan also pops up as Shatterstar, Brad Pitt is the Vanisher, and lastly, Zazie Beetz is Domino. She refused to shave her armpits for the film, as she said she wanted to smash the stereotypes that it was weird and gross. According to IMDb Trivia, they envisioned her powers as being like a Rube Goldberg machine on steroids, in which everything seems to fall into place perfectly. It all just works out for her, which Deadpool describes as a 2008 Ryan Reynolds. We then learn that Shatterstar is from Mojo World, which is also a place that comes from the comics. Shatterstar being an alien is also confirmed to us when he gets cut up and sprays green blood. Being an alien basically makes him better at everything than everyone else, and in the end he's sort of like a Superman. Wade says that he wants to find a planet like that, with Weasel then saying,
"Isn't that Canada? You shut your goddamn trash mouth."
Again, Reynolds is obviously Canadian, so you gotta stick up for them. I like Canada, been to Toronto 5 times, and it was bloody brilliant. Now shut up for a second, yeah? I don't fully get the Presley versus Kaysen reference in the back, right? But apparently when Elvis was younger, he went to a hardware store and tried to buy a gun. A man named Alan Kaysen convinced him to get a guitar instead, and as they say, the rest is history. Not sure why they're fighting, but on top of this there's also a lot of funny stuff that they did to mess with the audience. They ended up shooting additional action moments just for the trailer with the X-Force, and this was to hide from the audience exactly what was going to happen. In an interview with Business Insider, Cruz told them they had to wear blankets and be shuffled in and off set, so that would further go to make people think something big was happening. He said he felt bad because of how excited some fans got, but also loved that the joke was that they all got killed straight away. Their fate is hinted to us when their profiles are put up on the wall, as there's knives in their photos, whereas Domino gets a pin. Peter's also a great standout as well, who had a social media account at the time that used to tweet out really bland stuff. Reynolds was actually behind most of it, and it was such a good way to help market the film. Now from here we cut to the prisoners getting sent out the icebox while Cable interrogates Weasel. He reveals they're going to Jerry Duggan Parkway, which is named after a Deadpool writer who was working on the book while the film was being made. He also warns them there's a wind advisory in effect, which is why Cable doesn't come from the sky.
I warn you, there's a wind advisory in effect.
Turbulent up here.
Cut to Deadpool going through the plan, and we also get a really cool Wolverine Easter egg. Deadpool has him drawn in a cage, harkening back to his time at Weapon X. However, above that we can see some writing that says, Prisoner 2461. That's a number Jean Valjean gets given when he's locked up in Les Miserables, and the character was played by Hugh Jackman in the recent movie adaptation. We can also see below it that it says DMC Prison, with DMC appearing on the trucks when they went to get Russell. Guessing this is like the Department for Damage Control, but instead of that, it's the Department for Mutant Control. You can also catch sequel money with them saying there's no need for a third act. These are joking about how the sequel got way more money so they could add in some big action scenes. In the first film, they had $7 million taken off the budget at the last minute, and thus they had to cut out a big motorbike chase. This made the creative team then rearrange the script and spread the first action scene throughout most of the movie. Deadpool then announces that he was always appalled by the sexism in the name X-Men, and he was angry that they weren't called X-People. I don't know if this is making fun of Victoria Alonso, who called the name outdated, or the Dark Phoenix saying it should be called
X-Women.
Pretty sure this was released before that, but either way, it's played tongue-in-cheek and making fun of people who demand stuff is always PC, and he says their name will be X-Force, with these scenes having lots of references to their comics. Domino calls it derivative, and that's what they were labelled at the time, with them being thought of as a way to revive the X-Men with some new blood. The series also had a big relaunch in issue 116, with it containing a mission in which they all got killed. Their leader was Zeitgeist, with that being his only ever appearance, which is why he has a tattoo that says 116. Later on, Deadpool's suit also gets burned and turns grey, similar to what he wore in his X-Force run. Deadpool then looks at the camera and says,
Laird! Hit it!
Which is a reference to the costume guy that worked on the movie. We then hear the song Thunderstruck by AC/DC, which could be a nod to Iron Man jumping out of a plane to the band's song during his second film. According to IMDb Trivia, Army Captain David Blakely of the Pathfinder platoon used to play this when the Pathfinders carried out jumps. The scene was apparently inspired by a real-life event that happened to Reynolds when the actor went skydiving. Apparently his parachute failed to open on the first try, and since then he's had a phobia of skydiving. As X-Force descend from the sky, we can also see that they line up in an X formation. Domino's the one who pulls her chute last, and this is why she avoids most of the wind. Now, initially, they also wanted them to land in a minefield, but they couldn't explain why one would be there. Everyone gets killed though, and as we see, Deadpool lands against a sign that says Hillside. According to IMDb Trivia, this was the original title of 15, which was the first film that Ryan Reynolds starred in. We can also see another reference to Spinal Tap, with a sign saying Puppet Show at noon. Spinal Tap opened up for a puppet show, and Deadpool here is also hanging like a puppet. When Zeitgeist is pulled into the wood chipper, you can also catch the name Geppetto, which is a reference to Pinocchio's father. Deadpool says the bad news is everyone's dead, but the good news is no one's gonna miss Shatterstar. That's because he was a bit of a prick, as he says, with him also being a dickhead in the comics who doesn't subscribe to YouTube channels. Deadpool then steals a red scooter, which is a nod to Deadpool's 68. As Domino comes in, we then get our Stanley cameo, as we can see his face upon a mural. You can also spot a sign that says Bettini Boulevard, named after the visual effects artist who worked on this scene. Here we see Domino's powers in full effect, with Deadpool mocking them for probably not being very cinematic. Have to admit, when I first heard about her powers being locked, I had no idea what that even meant. Sounded stupid, but seeing it play out, it works brilliantly, and it's one of the coolest set of powers I've seen. Deadpool also says,
I mean, luck? I mean, what coked out freak show comic book artist came up with that little chestnut? Probably a guy who can't draw feet!
Which is him making fun of Deadpool creator Rob Liefeld, who often got criticized because he didn't draw feet very well. So lots of YouTube videos talking about it, and he'd often use smoke as a way to help cover them. I like the guy, so not gonna slag him off, and apparently Liefeld loved the joke as well. Cable then grinds down the wall using his arm, which is similar to how Hulk also moves in the Avengers. Jumping on the convoy, he gets on board, and here we see several other mutants. Back here is Black Tom Cassidy, and we also get a cameo by director David Leitch. However, I bet you didn't know that the face model used for Juggernaut was also provided by Leitch. This was then stretched out, and Reynolds did his voice because they didn't have the budget to pay for anyone else. This is why the credits list the Juggernaut as himself, with Reynolds also providing the motion capture. We then get a scene of Domino fighting against Cable, with this being an opposite to how it is in the comics. There she was introduced as a former girlfriend of Cable, and it was Deadpool that she in fact hated. Speaking of opposites, the comics have her with white skin with a black circle around her eye, whereas here they switch it up. This is sort of like a Domino itself, as you tend to get black and white ones with the colours switched on them. Apparently during the scenes, Zazie Beetz also fainted with the leather suit cutting off her oxygen. She said that the suit was wildly impractical, and a not so bloody lucky, oh yeah, hey, now when Deadpool gets on board, we also get on to X-Men Origins with Deadpool slicing through a bullet like how he did in that film. Leitch wanted to cut the follow-up where he fails to stop several of them, but Reynolds found it hilarious and insisted they kept it in. When we get a shot from the side, you can see the bullets are hitting him, and this is by all the blood coming out his back. As the truck crashes, Deadpool teabags Cable, which is a nod to the opening of the first film when he did the same thing to Ajax Henchman. Deadpool ends up with his head on back to front, and after turning around he says,
"Suck it, Mel Gibson!"
That was added in for the Super Duper cut, and it's a reference to Lethal Weapon in which his character Riggs constantly gets a dislocated shoulder. Deadpool then reels off how he's a massive fan of Juggernaut, and he brings up the following comics. Uncanny X-Men 183, which has Juggernaut vs Colossus on the cover. This of course foreshadows the end, and he also mentions Thor 411. Don't know why he keeps saying it like that. I'd just say Thor 411. I sound like an idiot, but that has Juggernaut versus Thor on the cover, with them going head to head with Jonathan. There's also X-Men Unlimited 12, which ironically sees him as a prisoner. Deadpool then says,
"You know, it has always been a dream of mine to see my face reflected in your helmet as you charge at me with murderous intent."
A shoutouts to Kristen on Reddit for pointing out that this is a reference to a big Deadpool cover. Here we can catch Deadpool reflected in the helmet of Juggernaut whilst he charges towards him with murderous intent. Juggernaut ends up tearing Wade in half, with us then getting a clear reference to The Empire Strikes Back. Domino carries him on his back, which is just like how Chewbacca carried C-3PO. Back home, his legs start to regenerate, with Reynolds being the one that penned most of this scene. Blake Lively apparently came up with the phrase shirt cocking, which is something she'd said to Reynolds before. Won't imagine why that was, but we can also catch the unicorn toy on the couch, which Wade could be seen holding in the first film during that fast forward scene. Don't look at what he's doing. I said don't look. Deadpool then says,
"Bip it, Black Widow, I'm flowing."
Which is a reference to, well you get it, with ScarJo also being Reynolds' ex-wife. Cable then arrives, and Wade does a basic instinct and crosses his legs, which gets called out by Weasel. Here they have the baby Hitler debate, which is then something that gets brought up in the post-credits scene. Now this was cut from the theatrical release, and that was because it got a poor response at test screenings. The creative team didn't want people leaving with a negative feeling about the movie, and instead they shifted to using the device to fix real-world mistakes. However, the Super Duper cut allowed them to add it back in, and I think it's a hilarious way to play out one of the most asked time travel questions of all time. The scene also really shows us how similar that Deadpool and Cable are. The latter lost the people that he loved too, and Vanessa's death is similar to his wife's. She was attacked in her home just like Vanessa, and both are desperate to get back to them. Deadpool realizes that he too would go back and save Vanessa if he could, however he doesn't want to kill Russell as he's just a kid. Instead he just wants 30 seconds to try and change Russell to take him away from that darker path. However, we see that's going to be difficult to do, as Juggernaut's now the guy that's acting as his mentor. Leaving a supersized store, we can also see it's on fire, showing that Russell is close to getting his first kill. This will be when he gets a taste for it, and will become the man who kills Cable's family. Cut up in his cab, and Deadpool says,
"I bet 50 years from now we're best as buddies."
Which is a reference to this from Days of Future Past.
So you were always an asshole. I take it we're best buddies in the future.
Deadpool then says,
"Boom! Spoiler alert."
Which is a callback to this line from the first film.
Spoiler alert.
Pulling up to the X Mansion, Deadpool plays a mini boombox with a song being In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel. In the first film, he said he'd stand outside Vanessa's house playing Careless Whisper, with both being a reference to the movie Say Anything. You might also notice that he's taped up a suit as well, with there being a lot of it around the waist because he got ripped apart. From here, we then arrive at the school, and if you recognise the seesaws and rides at the playground, then that's because they're from a pretty big movie. That is Terminator 2, with these being the same props used in Sarah's nightmare. Juggernaut also reveals at this point,
So you wear that helmet because your brother tries to read your mind?
Yeah, but he's in a wheelchair, so even Steven.
Now in the comics, Juggernaut and Professor X are half brothers, and Professor X can of course read people's minds. Getting out the cab, Deadpool says,
Are you Bear God? It's me, Margaret.
with this being an nod to this line from the first film.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
This was a reference to a book about a girl getting her first period, but here it's changed to Are You Bear God? Russell also dresses like the Unabomber, and we watch as they attack the school. This leads to Juggernaut attacking them, and Deadpool jumps on his back. He says,
Hey, big guy, the sun's getting real low.
which is of course a nod to what Black Widow says to Hulk to try and calm him down. This was later riffed on in Thor Ragnarok, with both this and that failing to work. We also get a stock sound effect, Wilhelm's scream, which if you're a fan of films, you'll have no doubt heard a gazillion times. I also love how the music in the background's just some choir shouting how it's the Juggernaut, and it's such a cool scene. Impaled through the head, we then hear some lovely music with Deadpool swooning over Colossus. This is a callback to the first film in which he had something similar happen on the not helicarrier while he looked at Vanessa. Deadpool then tells him to go sweep the leg, which is a callback to the Karate Kid. He then says,
Hey, go get him, Tiger!
which is a reference to what Mary Jane often says to Spider-Man, along with it being something said throughout the first film.
Go get her, Tiger.
Big CGI fight mate at this point, leading to all the orderlies being taken out in a bloodbath. Shoutouts to Has-Been on Reddit for pointing out that at the hour 45 mark we can catch Cable shooting someone in the head, which sprays blood on the camera. Deadpool looks at this blood and then turns in Cable's direction because he can see where the shot came from. Deadpool ends up saving Russell from going down that dark path, and Juggernaut is seemingly electrocuted to death. However, Colossus says he's just knocked out in the final lines, and in the last shot you can see something's going on at the pool. Zooming in on it, you can see him climbing out, confirming that the Juggernaut's still around, cause he's the Juggernaut, bitch! Terrible impressions, and that's why everyone hates the channel more than the other better breakdown channels. Now Deadpool ends up saving Russell from getting shot, showing he used his head instead of his heart. Strapping on the collar, he then makes it so he's the one who has to be his first kill. If Russell's willing to do that, then he's definitely going to be the bad guy, but Deadpool's sacrifice shows him there's good people. Colossus says, "No wait, because of you," which is a reference to the movie Field of Dreams. The film is further alluded to in these death moments, with Wade asking if they're in heaven. Biggest challenge of your life will be trying to watch Field of Dreams without crying, and the whole group does it while Deadpool dies. Drags on forever though, and you can kind of see everyone getting fed up the longer it goes on. It's so funny in the extended cut because they just keep going and going and going, but finally he passes into the afterlife. Like, get a move on, mate. Now it's from here that we get some major alterations from the theatrical cut, as originally we had an acoustic version of A Ha's Take on Me. The song was used on the Blu-ray menu, with it also appearing in some of the opening scenes. They switched it to the 2017 version with them gender flipping the video, so here it's the man being pulled through the barrier. Vanessa is the one that pulls him through, but he gets sucked back because Cable ends up saving him. Now as for the music in the super duper extended cut, it's a version of Out of the Ashes, with Wade asking if every day can be International Women's Day. That's a callback to the first movie.
International Women's Day.
She also says "Kiss Me Like You Miss Me" Red, with Vanessa then jumping into his arms like how she did at the beginning. Saved by Cable putting the token over his heart. I was wondering, bloody hell, how strong is that token? But it's made from real lead, and we save some from other lead, and we then end with Dopinder getting his hero moment. He kills the headmaster, and finally this family is together, with Cable staying in the past, or present. Now going to the credits, as the little pictures fall away, we get a map of Vancouver, which is where Ryan Reynolds is from. From here we go to the post-credit scene with them fixing up the watch. This allows Deadpool to travel through time and erase all his mistakes. Firstly, he saves Vanessa, which Leach said he wanted to have confirmed due to not allowing the audience to leave on a big bummer note. He also saves Peter and says Fox basically created the X-Force, so legally they could keep Cable as one of their properties. We were then going to get a scene of him urinating on Shatterstar's grave, but they decided to just cut it from the film. We also get some archive footage of X-Men Origins, with Deadpool asking Hugh Jackman to get back in the saddle if he asks him. As we know, that's going to be Deadpool 3, and he also shoots and kills Ryan Reynolds reading a Green Lantern script. Saved us from that, and honestly, it's the greatest post-credit scene of all time, topped off by Deadpool warming up to kill baby Adolf. We see him winding up and clapping his hands, which in itself is a nod to National Lampoons. This is what Clark Griswold did before he got in the pool with Christine Brinkley, which is also something that took maximum effort. Right at the end, it's revealed Deadpool didn't kill him, and he's gonna go get Cable to come do it because he loves killing kids. And that closes out the film, and the movie also stepped things up visually, with them realizing after the first one that the mouth didn't move much. Thus for this film, Ryan did 2 takes for every scene, with one being with the mask and the other being without it. This gave them a better foundation of how to animate it, with it having way more subtleties than what we got last time. You also have Colossus appearing more angular as well, with them updating the model from that first film. Over the credits, we have Team Headkick rapping about X-Force, with them providing the Deadpool rap in the first film and also in the game. Got a claim on the first breakdown for playing that, so I don't want to risk it, but go check it out on YouTube because it's a pretty cool song. Also, forgot to mention that when Cable reveals he's from the future, Deadpool asks what Sharknado they're on. This is later picked up in the last Sharknado, It's About Time. There, when they travel to the future, they ask what Deadpool movie they're on, which is a nice franchise callback going back and forth between the two. But sadly, the film wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and Joy Harris lost her life while she was filming it. Standing in as a stunt double for Domino, she unfortunately died in a motorbike crash. The movie is dedicated to her, and it's always devastating hearing about these kinds of stories. Her legacy, of course, lives on though, and this is a movie that's brought happiness to millions. I hope you guys have enjoyed it too, and I've had lots of fun breaking down these 2 films. As of making this, the Deadpool 3 trailer hasn't been released yet, but I can't wait to dive into it once it hits the interweb. As with all our big breakdowns like this, you can get early access to them by becoming members. All it costs is 99 cents and 99 pence a month, and you'll get all these before anybody else. Huge thank you to everyone who signed up, and we really appreciate all the support. If you want something else to watch, then check out our breakdown of the first film, in which we go over all the Easter eggs and that. Huge thank you for sticking through the video. I'm exhausted, but I'll see you next time. You've been the best. I've been Paul as always, and I hope you have a good week. Have a bloody good one and enjoy that trailer. If you're from the future and you've seen the trailer, let me know if the trailer's good. Take care of yourself. I love you guys. Peace.